Is it live now?
We're live now. Yeah. Did
Because
did I throw
well,
you
no,
off
because
there?
no, Restream gave me this big thing that says that your stream was unexpectedly shut down.
Hmm. Sounds about right.
Yeah, it does sound about right.
We're shutting down the traction lab. Just
Yeah, you guys,
too
yeah,
much.
sorry.
You signed the agreement, said you wouldn't be doing human trials, but we are running experiments on humans and startups. So
It's true. I have signed paperwork that says I'm not doing experiments on human beings. We will leave the reason and rationale for that little legal agreement a mystery. That way, you guys can all draw your own conclusions about who would make me sign that and why. It's like when you get the warnings on something you buy, and you're like, "What the hell would they ever need this warning for?" It's because it came from a lawsuit at some point. So, just saying. So Cameron, it's happy hour. It's July 3rd when we're recording this. What do you have in that giant mug of yours?
Well, I did go for a 5K run, so it's nothing exciting outside of a red dye Gatorade. So poison with the red dye. What is that? I don't know what the actual number. Red 48 or
40.
something like. Red 40.
But it's perfectly fine for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't let the fear mongers get the better of that one.
Yeah. So, but I'm fueled on Red 40 and a polio vaccination. Other than that, I had quite the cocktail in my arm and Red 40 down the throat. So.
That sounds like the good life.
Yes, exactly. How about you?
Well, I did not get any immunizations today, as it turned out. I was trying to remember what they inoculated. It did something last year that I was like surprised, like, oh, okay, all right, we'll do that. But hey, if they tell me to that it's medically recommended, I'm in. So
I hear you.
Assuming the standard level of the standard risk profile, I mean. But not if they say like they want to open me up, then I'm gonna be like, well, let's talk about this a little bit here. I want some explanation.
I hear you.
Well, speaking of conducting invasive operations on startups, welcome to office hours. Probably should have said that about a half hour ago when we kicked off. But for those of you watching live, hello! Thank you for joining us here in this delightful happy hour. For those of you who are watching asynchronously, we love you too. That's totally cool. Try joining us live sometime. We're doing it like 3 times a week now. We were on Instagram earlier today. We're on LinkedIn now. We were on Substack a couple days ago. Although if you're actually watching the repeat, you might actually already know that. But it's a lot of fun. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments, drop them in the chat. It doesn't matter if it's a replay. We will still read them and then put them in the queue. And we're going to start with the hopper because it always takes the audience a little bit to warm up. Not to mention that it also takes a little bit it takes like a full minute for the stream to get to LinkedIn for some reason. And so everything's always a bit delayed there. I'm not sure what's up with that. But I'm happy to be here, Cameron. Hopefully you are as well.
Yeah, I mean, you forced my hand a little bit, but it's all good. I'm happy to be here. I'm just messing up. It's great to be here. I'm just messing.
I could see it's gonna be that kind of day. I'm just gonna go and
there you
pull
go.
Out the tequila here.
There you go.
For when it's needed.
Depending on the questions.
Depending on the question. I'm gonna see if I can put that still in shot, but slightly out of the way. All right, there we go. Although that's kind of weird placement there. With the half screen here, it makes it a little bit weird. Because I have my laptop with the questions here. All right, we'll deal with it.
The grab bag. You have the grab bag there.
I have the grab bag, the hopper here, the drum that we spin like we're at bingo night. Yeah, it's right here. That's right here. But yeah, I have a bag. We could do a grab bag. There we are. There's my grab bag.
There we go. It's actually number 2.
Yes. All right. Well, you already called the number, so I suppose we're good there. But let's do it. Let's dive in. Number 2. So this is a mobile journaling app for Gen Z. Cool. All right, they say that we're seeing 300 daily actives, but session time dropped after we added guided prompts. Do we pull them or wait?
Say it one more time. Just I can't.
We're seeing 300 daily actives, but session time dropped after we added guided prompts. Do we pull them or wait?
Session time dropped after they launched the new feature. I don't know that those are necessarily adding something new would have people engage less, unless that was like a barrier for them engaging in what they were plugging in going forward. So I think part of it is, looking at how did you integrate this new feature addition, and is it something that like is forced upon them, that they were coming in actually, getting good value, and then like, oh, let's test this new feature. But then it was like every time you open up the app, it's like, here's your daily prompt for journaling, and then you're no longer actually engaging in it. So I'm not sure. I think that one's kind of, it didn't stump me. I just think it's like they might not be necessarily hand in hand. There might actually be something larger going on. And so I think the intention should have been at the forefront of that. Like, how did you decide to integrate this feature, and what was like leading people to wanting this? Or did you just kind of say, hey, this should be the feature that we're adding in, and then it had a negative impact? But what about you?
So I think all that's right. I guess I would say, like, why, like, not only why did you add it, but more specifically, like, what was the behavior you were trying to drive? So like, if you just added it because you thought it was a cool feature, then please don't do that anymore. You're just wasting time and money. Usually you're saying, like, we're trying to do something, and maybe we're trying to, like, were you trying to say, well, if we added guided prompts, people will stay longer on the app? Were you like trying to get more activity on there? Were you adding these guided prompts in order to get people to return? So like, let's say that you wanted to up your daily actives by sending an email or a mobile notification that was like, hey, here's today's guided prompt to try to drive them back in. Were you trying to form a habit just to get people to get some regularity? Like, we need to know why you added the feature. And more importantly, you need to know why you added the feature, because that's going to tell you whether it was working or not. Just like we added this thing and then, session time dropped. I'm not sure if that's a bad thing, and because I don't know what you were trying to do. So like, if session time dropped, but people were coming in every day, then that's not necessarily a bad thing, depending on how your business model is structured. If you're trying, like, usually this kind of app is not like something where we're really concerned with seat time. Because it's like software as a service, it's monthly subscription. And whereas if you're doing like a social media play, we really like screen time is all we care about. And because like that's just gives anytime your eyeballs are on the screen, it's more inventory for us to sell to advertisers. So like that's what we want. But if that's not what you're after, because that's not your business model, then I don't care about screen time unless that screen time is going to reflect on another metric. So what were you trying to impact? And did you get that or not? And how is that related to the business model itself? And then again, remember, adding that stuff is like trying to drive behavior. So what behavior did you drive?
Yeah, so I think that's a one. Thanks for bringing that in, because I think the business model in terms of how they're monetizing is key. If they're needing to drive more time on the app, then that obviously had the negative impact. But if it did increase the like activation on a regular cadence, so for example, say maybe it's harder for most people to maybe get started in journaling, and so maybe they're not engaging as much, but they're now coming on a more regular basis, and so now they're actually getting value out of it versus not actually using it. So I think that's a really great point there.
Every time you turn away, you're not facing your mic and it cuts out.
Shoot.
We heard your whole answer, but then you turned away to say something, and it was like you were, covering the receiver and talking to somebody in the room, or like it was like you're in like congressional testimony, and you're just like, I have no recollection at this time, Senator.
Well, I don't remember what I said, but I think it was, you had some good points. So that was mainly what I was doing.
I'm glad we surfaced that again. I needed to hear that. All right, pick another number from the bingo drum.
How many do we have?
We have less than 10.
Less than 10, but more than 6.
Yes. Everything else is a mystery.
All right, let's go 7. Lucky number 11.
All right, here we go. So the question is from a community platform for women in leadership. They're the ones who asked. Did you guys ask a question? Was that last week or maybe
was
2
that
weeks ago?
Raha Mayani from Australia?
I don't know. I don't have. I don't really have attribution on the quote right now. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, a community platform for women in leadership. Here's the question. We get a lot of LinkedIn likes, but very few new members to the community. How do we turn attention into growth?
A lot of LinkedIn likes.
Well, LinkedIn likes don't matter. Yeah, they do feel good. LinkedIn likes do feel good. I chase LinkedIn likes. Cameron chases LinkedIn likes.
More than most.
But we don't do that pretending that that's a lead funnel. I guess is what I'm saying there. So like the LinkedIn likes don't translate really to anything. If your strategy in posting is to get people to leave LinkedIn and join your community. So turning attention into growth is not necessarily possible. So because the people who are paying attention to you might actually not be customers at all. Right. And so like my first question is, do we know that? Right. And this is the danger of like focusing on vanity metrics, is that we actually, not only do they not measure what we want them to measure, we don't even know if they mean what we think that they mean in that context. What you're after here is distribution to whom? Distribution to your customers. And so how do we know we're actually getting in front of our customers in the first place? And so how do we go from measuring something like likes to measuring intent? Right? Their intent to join, their intent to buy, intent to sign up. Can you do, like, maybe they're not ready to join the community. Are they clicking the links at all? Are they leaving the platform at all? If they're leaving the platform and not signing up, that's telling you something interesting, right? If they're not leaving the platform at all, that also tells you something interesting, but it tells you something different. So all those things are kind of important. But I'll let you add on here. I'm sure you have thoughts, Cameron.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, we think probably we put more value on likes and engagements than they're probably worth. And I think, part of it is people will just like something because they want to support you versus that they actually like find value in what you're posting. And so part of it is, are you trying to like drive in a post to this, outside area, and they maybe agree with what you're saying, but then when they're getting to the place, they're not necessarily getting the value or seeing the perceived value related to it. And so connecting those particular dots could be one thing. And then also, are they just actually getting enough value from whatever you're posting on LinkedIn? And so the problem's not large enough for them to like actually go join a community and see what the other elements are. And so I think part of it is like associating what you're posting and then what's your strategy to drive them to actual like conversion. And so I don't have a ton else to add outside of just oftentimes if we're just measuring likes, it's so far removed from the action we're actually probably trying to have them take, because they might actually like, see more, they might click see more and then really like what you're saying and then click on the link and they never actually like your post. And so you actually had the action you wanted and they never liked it, versus someone who comes and likes it might never be that person that's actually going to convert. So part of it is seeing what your call to action is related to your overall posting strategy. But again, it all ties to like, what is the experiment? So
totally, yeah, couldn't agree more. I think we probably beat that one enough. So if you guys watching live, if you have any questions, throw them down into the comments. And Cameron, pull a number out of the bingo drum.
Let's do 4 for 4th of July.
For those of you who didn't watch Instagram, Cameron's already done that joke today. All right. This is web tool.
Well, I have to come back now since for those that were waiting patiently for the etymology of ruckus.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead.
Hold on. I think the word I said was raucous, not ruckus.
Raucous. Well,
what's the etymology of ruckus then?
Well, I tried to spell. How do you spell raucous?
R-A-U-C.
R-A-U-C. Oh, well, I can ask that too, but I asked for ruckus.
I use ruckus all the time because we like to cause a ruckus at the Traction Lab. So exactly. What is the etymology of ruckus?
Of ruckus, so the origin of ruckus is an American English, I guess, word first appearing in the late 19th century. It is believed to be a blend of two older words, ruction, which is a disturbance or quarrel, which was in mid-18th century Irish English origin, to then rumpus, which is a noisy disturbance, origin uncertain, and possibly imitative. So it's the combination of ruction and rumpus, which are the disturbance and quarrel nature of both of those words. And so apparently at some point they maybe merged to be what we call today now as ruckus.
Okay. Well, that is good to know.
And then raucous is R-A-U-C-U-S.
Yeah.
So the etymology is a mid-18th century from Latin, meaning hoarse, harsh sounding, or rough in voice. It adopted into English around 1769 to describe harsh or grating sounds and eventually, by extension, louder, disorderly behavior. So the raucous and ruckus are fairly similar in the way that they, I guess, are connected.
Well, before I give Cameron new words like brouhaha and we lose more audience members.
Well, we got the likes though. They liked that component of it.
All right. Well, that's good. That's good to know. All right, here let's hit up our next question with the grab bag. If you got questions out there, drop them in the comments. Here we go. So this is a web tool for pre-med students. I don't know what that means, but our free plan is getting good traction, but no one's upgraded to pro. Do we change the paywall or the plan? Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Do we change the paywall or the plan? I think part of it is probably relooking at your freemium strategy. You might be giving away too much value. So, or, as you're looking at this free component, they're obviously getting, I guess part of it is like, how are they defining traction? I guess is actually one of the things that comes to mind is, is traction just signing up and then they never activate? And so that's actually a signal, even though it's free, they're not really utilizing the thing. And so, it's not really true traction. They're just kind of downloading the app because it's free and never utilizing it. But if it's free, they're downloading it, getting high usage based on the free features, then it might be looking at kind of what can you sufficiently bring in on free, but then like this is a key element that you might upgrade to the pro going forward. So I might rethink how you actually structured your plan. But I'd be curious of your thoughts, JDM.
Yeah. So I think I agree with all of that. I think that there might be like some price fear, right? That's often behind why they give too much away in the free tier. So I would kind of keep that in check, maybe process that fear a little bit. And then, yes, you might think about restructuring the plan a little bit. I would also maybe think a little bit about perceived value versus actual need. So are people signing up for the free trial or for the free tier because it's free and it's really just not important enough to pay for, and so nobody's really going to pay for it, and it doesn't matter how great it is, it's a luxury, nice to have, whatever, but yeah, we're signing up with the free plan. So that it could be something like that in there. A way that you could look to check that would be on the engagement. and activation. So after people sign up, if they stay using it a lot and you get like good engagement, good retention, everybody activates, then it's probably not that, because they're investing time into using it. Now that might mean that you're not offering enough value in your premium tier to warrant the additional monetary cost, but it also might be a signal that you're offering too much in the free tier. But either way, it's not because it's not something that is valuable. Whereas if you're getting all the signups and that's your traction, is this measurement of signups, but then nobody's actually using it or you're not retaining anybody long term, then I think that that's a signal that it wasn't really valuable anyway. It was more about perceived value and that you didn't cover an actual need.
Yep. Like it. Cool.
Cool. Done.
Officially got that one.
All right. Let's
go to the top. Let's just go to the top. Number one.
Okay. This is going to sound like a friend of ours, even though it is not a friend of ours. So this is going to be a real estate app, or an AI assistant for real estate apps. All right, an AI assistant for real estate apps. And their question is, we've had 27 people sign up, but only 4 connected their CRM. Should we follow up or change the onboarding?
Should we follow up or change the onboarding? So I
mean, like, should we follow up with the customers?
Yeah, I think
like nudge them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably worth looking and mapping out that onboarding process. So we've seen this not only in like this real estate assistant example, but also like anytime there's data integration, right? It speaks to this element of their pain points, and that being like urgent and severe. And so if they haven't fully gone and connected, it's not necessarily number one on their list. And so one, just following up with like a nudge is, I feel like, probably not sufficient and might actually bother the person, versus like going back and saying, hey, we realized you didn't connect your CRM. Is there something we can do to support you in that process? And more so of like kind of from a discovery lens to explore what that looks like. But part of that is overall like remapping probably what that onboarding engagement looks like. And so is there something where you provide a little more hands-on white glove approach to that onboarding process to sufficiently get them connected before going forward? But I think the bigger challenge I'm potentially feeling and seeing is that there's not really maybe this urgency and severity related to the pain point. And so I'd be curious of those 4 that connected, are they actively using it? And like, why are they different than the 27 people who signed up? And then how do you get in front of more of those 4 people?
Yeah, I think that's all. I think you really covered the kind of the 3 different potential challenges here. So one is that you ended on was we're hitting a lot of the wrong customers, and so it was like, I'll take it out, fine, I'm gonna get this guy off my back, right? And so then they'll just sort of sign up ish, but then never really connect anything because it was never really worth more effort than typing in their email address somewhere, right, and picking a password. So then it's like, what has the 4 different than 27? The other one you mentioned was like sometimes that there's like an onboarding hurdle, right? And so like activation, which is what we would probably call connecting your CRM here, right? So that like activation is a gate. If you think about your metrics, right? And we do like stage gating in venture science. And so like that's one of the gates, and it's a traction gate to actually go through. And so if you're getting like some bottleneck at that gate, it's worth investigating why. And that it might be because it's just too difficult. And so then something about onboarding might be added to help them out, or maybe it's a UX thing where they're just not clear about what they're going to do, et cetera. And the only way you're going to find out either of those 2 things is by talking to the people who didn't sign up, the 23 people who didn't sign up. The third thing that might be here is that you might want to look at what was promised versus what was delivered. Like, how did you get them to sign up, and like, why didn't that work? Or why aren't they getting that? Or why might not they be getting that?
Yeah, because like visually what we have to think about is like, we talk about this inertia that they're facing and kind of going through this process, right? There's like time and energy they have to put towards actually like integrating the CRM and data. And so if your value proposition isn't strong enough to pull them against the inertia, then that leaves questions out there. And so how do you remove some of that friction along that path?
Cool.
Cool.
All right. How about we do a marketplace for drone pilots?
Marketplace for drone pilots. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think I've actually, I don't know, I'm pretty sure I don't know you, but if you do, I apologize. But I have heard a similar idea pitched before. Okay, so because they have to be licensed, like these pilots need need FAA licenses. So, all right, so it's a marketplace for contract drone pilots, and we've got 150 pilots onboarded, but 0 bookings. Should we pause supply and push customer acquisition instead?
You didn't throw it up on the chat here, or were you going to, or no?
It's showing up on my screen. Is it not showing up on yours?
I see the 27 one.
All right, let me turn it off and turn it back on. Did that work?
There we go. Yep. Thank you.
I actually read it off the screen. So Restream's just having fun with us today.
So we've got 150 pilots onboarded and 0 bookings. Should we pause supply and push customer acquisition instead? Well,
there's a detail missing here. You have 150 pilots onboarded. How many customers do you have onboarded?
Right.
Do you have any? Why are there 0 bookings? Do you not have any customers on here, or do you not is your theory that you have a bunch of customers but just not enough of them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are missing that data to understand that side of the marketplace. But I guess in terms of should you pause supply and push acquisition instead, it seems like, well, if your goal is to drive bookings, it would be valuable to start to get some customers on there making transactions. And even if it's a little bit more manual, where you're engaging customers that need pilots and you bring them in and, kind of facilitate the marketplace in a more manual fashion, at least you're kind of proving out that that's a true need. But other than that, we're not really driving any traction related to making those connections happen. So yeah, and a part of it is also just what comes to mind is how often are these transactions taking place, and it's not necessarily buying and selling clothes or something that there's a lot of those transactions, I would imagine. And so is it more of this being actually a search tool to find the right type of pilot for something, and so you're not having these unique cases, and that is a misalignment of what actually maybe the problem solution fit would be?
Yeah, 2 things come to mind. One that's in line with what you were talking about, and the other one that's maybe a little bit more sharp, I'll just say, direct. So the first thing is so we have this concept in marketplaces called liquidity, and it's a little kind of technical here, but what it means is the ability to actually complete a transaction. And so I want to know if we have the ability to complete a transaction. So do we actually have a job that these 150 pilots could theoretically contract for, or do we not have those jobs at all? If we don't have those jobs at all, then it's okay, well, we actually don't have any liquidity on this platform. There's nothing here to there are no transactions to actually facilitate, and therefore our platform is meaningless at the moment, right? And so then, yeah, you probably do need to focus on some customer acquisition because we don't have the ability to engage in a transaction. Oftentimes you have a strategy for liquidity. I often call it density because it is a word that makes a little bit more sense to me in this space. So these are drone pilots. These are not going to be predator drones. They're not flying thousands of miles. These are going to be flying fairly locally, which means there's a geographic component here, right? Are these 150 just scattered throughout the world? If so, then you kind of have to get lucky that there's somebody needing a drone where these pilots are. Whereas instead you said, let me onboard 150 pilots throughout California. And it's well, that's interesting because now we have some density here. And so if we also are marketing into the California market on the customer side, then we're much more likely to be able to have liquidity in those transactions because there's geographic density here that the customers that we're acquiring are able to find a transaction, are able to complete a transaction. That geography is an easy example, but there's lots of other ways to get to liquidity. There's price, timing, features and offering. There's a number of different ways. So you basically have to have somebody who wants what they're selling, and so right now you don't have anybody who wants what they're selling. that leads me to the sharper question. So this is like a little brag here, right? We've got 150 pilots onboarded, right? So it's a little bit of a brag. I saw your face, Cameron. I'm not going to brag. I'm saying that in the question is embedded a little bit, right? They're clearly happy with this, right? Like we've got 150 pilots, but we don't have any bookings. Should we stop with the supply and go push customer acquisition? There's a sense of at least sufficiency, right? To 150. But here's my question: if no one's transacted, how do you know the supply is good? Like,
Shoot.
all right. It said my connection was lost there.
Yeah, you were lost, just lost in the platform of connecting with drones.
Well, did my question actually come through?
No, you weren't
So
quite at the question.
The more pointed question, right, was, which the liquidity thing was kind of leading me to the sharper question is, if no one's transacted, how do you know the supply is good?
Right.
Like, how do you know it's the right pilots? How do you know it's enough pilots? How do you know you have density on that? Like, you don't know that. And that's like, there's this brag built into it. Like, we got 150 pilots on board, and they're clearly happy about that. And I don't know if that's good because you've had 0 bookings. I have no idea if that's good. I have no idea if these are the right pilots, the wrong pilots. I have no idea if they're situated in the right place, if the offering's right. Like, I have no idea. And so like, I would not rest on we have 150 pilots unless you have the other data that shows why you don't have liquidity. And if you do have liquidity, then you have a bigger problem because people just don't want what you're selling. So
yeah, there you
have
go.
fun with that. Cool. All right. I just wanted to do that. I saw a drone pilot in there. I wanted to do a drone one.
Go for it. Another one look interesting. I mean, you see the bag, so if there's
I should probably
shiny
share
object,
the grab bag with you.
You should, if there's a shiny object, let's go for it.
Let's see. I'm gonna look for shiny object. All right. Okay, here's one. This is an AI note summarizer for customer success teams. All right, an AI note summarizer.
I like it, but not unique.
What?
I said I like it, but it's not like super unique. So
it is not. And their question is, we're on a 3-week pilot with a mid-sized SaaS company.
It says you're showing the pilot one again.
What?
Yeah.
The drone pilot one?
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
All right. Restream is not having a good day. All right. We're on a 3-week pilot with a mid-sized SaaS company. What should we track to make sure they convert? Well, you're asking this way too fucking late, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
you're already in the goddamn pilot.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing was what was the commitment in the pilot ahead of time, right? So as you kind of were going into converting the pilot, we often talk about if you don't have this intentionality that after a certain period of, it looks like 3 weeks, that this converts into becoming a paying customer, then you're going to have to ultimately sell them again, which is ultimately selling them twice because you sold them on the initial pilot. Now you have to sell them going forward again. And so as we think about it was, if you haven't done that, then, okay, we need to then go look at what was the value promise that you had within this 3 weeks and being able to ensure that that's actually the components that you're going to hit. And so if you didn't structure that into it, then, you're kind of in this kind of ambiguous space of what is a successful pilot, but it should tie to the value proposition and really why they're ultimately signing up to go through this. If it's just that you said, hey, we're offering this thing for free, and then, after 3 weeks, we'll discuss about payment, then there's a little bit more challenges related to, okay, how do we measure if we're actually on the right track to convert? But part of that is then maybe staying in concert and communication with them to see if you're actually delivering on that value promise that at least they signed up for, and understanding what that value promise was.
Yeah, this is something that trips a lot of founders up. We see this like all the time, where we're in a pilot, and then there's going to be this process later where we have to, like to your point, Cameron, go back through the sales process. And I think a lot of times that's because the sales process didn't happen in the first place. And I don't just mean like key details were missing. I mean, it's like they didn't do it as sales. They did this partnership. We're gonna do a pilot. Let's test this out. You're helping me. I'm helping you. And it's very like loose, very soft, and that's just not interesting from a pilot. That might be like a beta test, or a like a customer use test or something like that. But it's not really a pilot in the sense that it's going to lead to any conversion at that point. And so, like, the way that you need to approach this is to figure out in advance, before the pilot really, is what would success look like for them to use this for 3 weeks, and then build that in as the marker of success. And otherwise, as you start measuring this, you're going to start measuring usage. You're going to start saying like, oh, well, let's track, like, how often are they going in? You know, how many notes are they summarizing, and like all those things. And like, oh, look at all this, our usage data is great. And I suppose all things being equal, there's probably a correlation there. But just seeing those things is not going to lead to conversions, because we have not agreed together on what success looks like. And you can't come back to them at the end and say, well, but look how many notes they summarized. Like, it's that's not going to be what matters to them. They don't give a shit about how many conversations or how many notes got summarized. They care about outcomes, and like, this is customer success, so they're going to care about customer satisfaction. They care about deals. They're going to care about retention. They're going to care about those things. And so find out what they care about and say, how is this going to help them do that? And then what would it look like to measure that success in the context of this pilot? And that's where I want to introduce this I don't think we've really talked about it much before. I think there's probably a really good article, or maybe a zero to traction episode in here about this, but it's a concept called pre-close customer discovery.
Pre-close customer discovery.
Pre-close customer discovery. And
whoa.
I know it. That's why I don't use it very often, because it's kind of like a big chunky, like, look at that $4 word. But it's what it means is kind of what it sounds like. So when you do customer discovery, and like oftentimes as you're going through that, you end up with a pilot, right? And so at the time we do that, we get this like soft answer of, I'm interested. Sure, let's do a pilot. And most founders will just stop right there. Like, customer discovery is done. Now we're going to go into pilot mode. And that's a mistake, because customer discovery was not done because of this problem with getting to the close. So you want to do pre-close in the customer discovery. So you want to figure out what actually does make them buy. Why we want them to know what outcome that you could deliver for them that would get them to say, yes, I need this. You want to figure out like who actually signs the checks. Right? Because oftentimes, like, I see this all the time too, particularly when you're doing like B2E or B2G or ed tech or something like that, where the person doing the pilot doesn't even have buying authority. And so like, it doesn't matter at the end of the pilot. You still now have to go all the way back and then bring in procurement and find out, then discover who the saboteurs are and go through all this stuff. So you need to know that too. You need to know what tools they're comparing you to. You need to know like what's at stake if they say yes. Right? Like, what might they lose? And then find the saboteurs. Who else in the company is going to lose something because you did this? Like, IT is a common one in B2E, where IT is like, they have this fiefdom, right, of the thing that they own because it's systems and technology, and like, you're doing something that's going to maybe make it less valuable for them, and at the end of the day, that is going to translate to budgets and dollars. And so IT is going to push back on that. Usually there's an approval somewhere that has to come from IT, so you need to know about those things. And like, is there an initiative inside the company that this is tied to? So like, this is customer success, so like, do they have a current powerful initiative right now to increase retention? Right? Then like, can you tie the outcome of this pilot to a retention metric that they care about that's part of this initiative? Because then you're basically guaranteeing like the success at this point. So it's pre-close customer discovery. It's learning everything you need to know about the close, like what makes them close, before you ever try to get the close. So all this is kind of stuff that you want to do before you even begin a pilot, ideally. Otherwise, you're in this free product, you need to figure out all this stuff now. Because what you don't want to have happen, as Cameron said, and as I already said, is you don't want to get to the end of the pilot and then have them ask, now what? Or worse, they don't ask now what. And now you have to go to them and say, so, want to do a deal?
There you go. I don't. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
No, I love that. Solid points. And I think the biggest thing for me is, you don't want to sell them twice. So being clear on the upfront, as most things, is like the more we can start to gather that evidence beforehand, that's key. If not, then still understand what did they sign up for, and make sure that you can deliver on that. But we did get a couple of questions. I don't know if you saw in the chat.
All right, let's do it. Let's dive in. So our first question is from Cameron.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
Go for it.
All right. What is your Senator wants to know, what is your opinion on MOUs to show traction? So this is very stage dependent, right? So, I mean, I think MOUs are great when either one of two things is true. Either you're really early, and so you're trying to show some early traction, maybe before you can actually sell, or to maybe get around longer sales cycles, like that kind of thing. So like we want to show evidence because we can't afford to front 6-month sales cycles on things, right? Then you could like go, well, if we can figure out the sales cycle part of it, like there is at least strong demand here, and we know that because they've signed an MOU. So I think like that's a good use case. Another good use case for an MOU might be if you're actually much further along, but it's a deep tech thing. And so you're trying to you literally can't deliver it right now, even if you wanted to, but that's okay. And we still need to show some of this early traction. I think both of those are great. If you're able to sell and you're able to close deals and that's all very real, then I'm going to say, why are you getting MOUs, right? Then they're not that meaningful to show traction. So it's always compared to what, right? What are the other alternatives on the table and what are we trying to prove from that? So I'm a fan. MOUs, LOIs, I think they're fantastic. We're really commonly advising startups to go after the MOUs and to go after the LOIs in the early days, because there's a couple things that happen. One is you're actually gaining some evidence that's useful for fundraising, but the other side of it is that you're actually validating bets and you're able to learn, is that sales cycle even worth us diving into? If we can't even get them to sign an MOU, or we can't even get them to sign an LOI, then that's a sign that the sales cycle isn't going to solve this. We're actually just going to keep compounding that issue over time. So they're really great as an internal test too.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, again, it all comes, the devil's in the details of it. So, if it's actually just a very short MOU that doesn't actually outline the value proposition, the price point, some of those elements of it, you're not testing all the components of the offer. And so ensuring that in terms of what you're putting out there in terms of the MOU as a signal of traction is tied to, this is what it is, this is, say the amount of units or whatever that might be, and what they're actually committing to in terms of that MOU. And so that then has greater traction than them just saying, this is our area of understanding and interest, but this is actually what we are signing up to do. So again, stage dependent, but it's all also related to what is actually in the details of what they're signing, because the more that's in there, the more you might get pushback in terms of the quote unquote negotiation of what that offer ultimately is.
All right.
Cool. Should we bring our friend Yanni's question?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk to Yanni.
Here we go. Well, thanks for hopping on per usual. Our repeat customer here, so thanks for hopping in. So initial traction interviews look great, but we're finding buying power is distributed across leadership. So that's with operational, clinical, and ownership. How do I tackle buyer power being unconsolidated in pre-market discovery? So I think, for me, the starting point is, I guess, yes, each clinic is probably run differently, and decisions may be made differently across those different clinics. And so again, when we look at that kind of validation roadmap and think of where that first validation point is having a willing buyer with an urgent problem, or an urgent problem with a willing buyer, is who in these clinics is really facing the problem that you're trying to solve, and are they having this urgency related to it? Whereas, if you're looking at it's the ownership that really has the problem, but they're not the decision maker. Well, obviously they are a decision maker because they're an owner of the business, but they're less in the day-to-day or something, then that might be something to look at. But if it's hey, I'm really solving a clinician, operational problem or a person at kind of the office manager, but they don't have the decision-making power, then they're going to have to convince the owner of why they should be solving this problem. And so is that actually the clinic that you want to start with, in terms of the person who has the pain point and would be quote unquote a willing buyer, has no decision making power? Might not be the best process versus finding those clinics that individual has decision making power and actually has budget allocated. So we think of that early adopter pyramid, right? They're the top of that pyramid where they actually have budget and capacity to make those decisions. And so narrowing in on that target audience, I think would be the best. And not to say that you won't ever serve those other clinics, but those might not be your early adopters, just because you're now going to have to work through a whole different sales process, and that doesn't allow you to be as repeatable in those early stages.
Yeah, I have a few things to say about this, but I'll first connect it back to the previous question about MOUs, because it's actually similar, right? So like this would be an example where you go to the friendliest face in the room and you agree to get like a pilot going, and they're going to do a little pilot, but you have all these other people as part of this like distributed buying power structure that are completely omitted from the process. And so like you have this pilot that cannot go anywhere, right? And then but if you do an MOU, that's going to start surfacing some of these things, right? Because they're going to be like, oh, well, I actually can't buy this. And then you're going to get all this. So, oh, I see there's all these other people who need to be part of this decision. You can start to service a lot of those other things. So I want to connect back to that. The second thing I want to do is congratulate Yanni for identifying a pretty big stumbling block on the go-to-market side. It's great that you recognize this and found this. A lot of people don't see it until it's way too late. So kudos for doing that. That's awesome. It's gold. Second thing I would say is like, can you map out the buying committee, if you will? Right. So who is the group of people? And there's this there's a better acronym for it out there, but the one that I was using before is like BAUI. So BAUI, so that you have the buyers.
It's the etymology of just kidding.
BAUI. Well, it's an acronym.
I know. That's the joke.
It's the buyers, approvers, the users, and the influencers. Right. So it's the 4 different groups of people that are involved in the process. And so a lot of times the buyer is maybe a CFO type. So they're a literal buyer. They write the checks, but they don't give a shit about like the users and anything like that. Right. That there are maybe approvers in the process. So somebody actually can write the check, but other people actually have to approve it. Right. There's a boss in there somewhere who has to sign off on the transaction. Oftentimes that's the CFO too. Right. So you have like, we have a budget, whatever, we can use it, but we need to get signed off to purchase something from the CFO. So that could be a thing. Who are the influencers? Who are the other people in the room who can say yes, who can say no? That would be like the IT guy I referenced in the other example. Or there might be a number of other influencers as well, across the state of things. So you have, and then of course you have the users. And so like you map out the entire committee, right? Who has veto power? Who has urgency, right? Where is the pain felt? Which pains are felt different places? What are everybody's priorities, in that process? You can really like map that whole thing out. One big mistake that founders make at this point in the juncture is, and this is like, well, we're always like leaning into, we have like the traction science, then we have like the traction thinking, which is the founder psychology. This is the founder psychology side. So the founder psychology side is one of the big mistakes, is that we will like zoom in on the person that is nicest to us. Right. So like there's one person in this group who really likes us because they tend like they favor us. Maybe it's a user and we're solving their problem. And so they'd love us to have this. I see this in healthcare all the time when somebody's creating something to help a nurse. And as the nurses out there will know, leadership never buys shit to make nurses' lives better. And so like you can get all the friendly nurses that you want, but it's still not going to translate to anything because they don't have the buying power in and of themselves. And there's not a lot of people who have their back in that way. So because the current way is working. And so if you zero in on the people who are nice to you and ignore everybody else, you're basically, you're building something that no one can ever buy. So don't freeze or like on a favorite stakeholder simply because they're nice to you. And it's really easy to do because it's the easier conversation to have, and all the other conversations are really difficult. So I guess that like the last thing is, so how does this become actionable, right? So first, like the process that we would normally follow for customer discovery follows here too. It's just more complicated. So you still need to like do the customer interviews, but now we're interviewing across the whole committee, right? We're doing the whole decision chain, and we're always asking everybody who else needs to be involved for something like this to move forward. And you're talking to operations, talking to clinical leads, you're talking to ownership, and sometimes those conversations are all happening separately, but you're talking to all those people, and you're gathering all the things you would normally gather in customer discovery. You're gathering language, you're gathering pain points, gathering success criteria, and you'll have to figure out where those disagree, because oftentimes like we'll have things at odds with each other across different parts of that committee, and so that something that resonates really well with one person anti-resonates with someone else because their motivations are very different, right? So you do all that normal stuff there. Now we have that. So now it's like, okay, well, now that we understand our customer, we can design a value prop, but this time we have a composite value prop. And so like we're not selling to one product, we're not selling to one persona, we're selling a coherent outcome to a coalition of people. And so like, what is that composite value prop? What is that like coherent outcome, that's all combined together, right? And so the question that you then ask yourself is basically the same question you would then ask yourself ordinarily, which is not like, do you want it, but will they buy it, right? Which the committee version of this is not, do they want it, but can we deliver something to them that they will all get behind, right? Like, is there a thing there that we can know that they can all get behind in the process of that? And then the last thing that we always talk about here is like the urgency factor, right? So even if you have the pain and the pain is real and theoretically they would pay to solve it, if there's no urgency, they won't pay to solve it, even if the pain is really big. And so you have to validate urgency here, right? So this is where you ask all the normal questions about, have you ever bought something like this before? How did that sales process work? If you were to adopt this and the solution goes well, who's going to champion it internally? What kinds of decisions require meetings? Which kinds of decisions require memos, right? All of those kinds of things that you can get out of there. Are you solving a real problem, or are you just like collecting compliments, from people who like you? So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, we won't get his response for another 3 minutes because it's all delayed here. So, but nonetheless.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we're coming right up on the end of our time here, so maybe we will vamp for a second and see if there's a follow up from Yanni in the chat. No worries, Yanni, if not. But it's been a full week of office hours here. We've covered like a lot of ground in the questions here across different platforms. Yanni says thank you. So you are welcome, sir. As always, thanks for showing up again. Love to have you here and asking questions. So we're trying something new. For those of you who just love office hours and just love like this format of Ask Us Anything, or for some strange reason just like listening to Cameron and me riff, then you can check us out on Substack as well. We go live Tuesday mornings 9 a.m. on Substack, and then Thursday mornings 9 a.m. on Instagram. It's not always Cameron and I both schedules are real, but we try. And so you can feel free to hop on. You can just connect with me on Substack, connect with me on Instagram, and I'll make sure that you get notified when those things happen. But Tuesdays at 9 a.m., Thursdays at 9 a.m. And normally our office hours on LinkedIn are Fridays at noon, but Friday's a holiday, so we decided to hop on at this time. And the last thing I'll say, because it's something that we always say, is applications are open for the Traction Lab. We have another forum that we're filling up. We're always filling up the next forum. That's kind of how it's rolling applications. It's like don't think that we're always asking because we're not getting the applicants we need. It's because we're getting the applicants we need. We filled up a forum and ran that forum, and now we got to fill out the next one. So it's a grind. We're in a rolling model. So looking for. I think we just have a couple more slots next in our left forum, but. If anybody out there wants to come and get this sort of traction science, venture science, traction thinking approach applied to your startup, just the facts, focus on the evidence, and science the hell out of this shit, then you should do that. So
for sure. So we'll go to the next chat, but I do have one special announcement as well. Well, it's not like huge, so but more so is insider baseball here is keep an eye out on Monday, if not before then, likely on Monday. The applications for NorCal AngelCon will be going live, so special edition. You'll be able to apply for $100K in equity and non-dilutive capital. So that'll be coming live on Monday. So start getting your documents in order, getting your mind right for an application. Great opportunity. Last year, our final four stellar companies. One of them just got acquired, so 811 Spotter. Another one has raised, I think, $3+ million in funding, and then also the investment Arise is just continuing down their FDA regulatory and making huge strides in that space. And then Joppa was the other one who has done awesome, and I think just raised another additional $1 million. So part of it is if you're selected as a semifinalist, you get to go through a 5 or 6 week kind of investment readiness, and then obviously the Traction Lab will be plugging into that and supporting you all in that space. So definitely keep an eye out for that application going live, but do apply for the Traction Lab because we can help prepare you to be ready for that application deadline on August 1st. So
speaking of which,
yeah. Yep.
So like you mentioned, and we didn't mention it here, but 811 Spotter got acquired. That was a Traction Lab portfolio company. So we've been super happy to work with Mark and team and play our small role in his success. Yeah. So we've been celebrating since that happened last week. And if you want to check out some of the lessons learned from that, Cameron wrote a great article based on a conversation that he and I had with Mark last week, a little celebratory conversation with celebratory drinks with him that dropped on our Traction Thinking Substack. So check out that story. There's a great metaphor about marathons in there that went over my head until Cameron explained it in great detail in this article. It's a nice short article with it's packed with some good insights about how to get to that successful exit. So highly recommend that article. So check that out and hear more about Mark's great story, and come join the Traction Lab maybe and be our next successful exit.
Yep, you're here.
All right. I think we have one more question in the chat that we'll do before we sign off.
So throw up the question here.
All right. So Harsh is saying government clients don't often like consumers or businesses.
Don't buy not don't like.
Oh, don't! I was giving a word there. Don't like consumers. They don't like consumers.
The government doesn't like them.
That's an interesting. I honestly did not know where to take that. I'm like, what the fuck is Harsh talking about? Okay.
Don't buy the process.
That's 100% true. And enterprise often doesn't buy like other businesses as well. Education doesn't buy like other businesses as well. And they're very different things. And that's where some of those different strategies become really important. And this is where like those buying committees become really important as well to understand. So healthcare, like large healthcare, is another one that just operates differently. And all of those things are a little bit different, but they're more alike than they are to consumer businesses, to Harsh's point. But I think we actually had a question here. What signals do you consider most credible for deep tech startups to prove desirability in a B2G market? Vibes, right? Vibes.
What signals do you consider most credible for deep tech startups to prove desirability in a B2G market? So, I mean, even though it's deep tech, the part of it is like the willingness to, one, it's evidence related to that they actually have the problem that this deep tech is solving. So like what tool or mechanism can you use to actually strongly validate that pain point is severe and urgent enough for when that deep tech play comes to fruition, it actually, you have basically a willing buyer versus like, yeah, we're interested. And when it's ready, let us know. And then we'll go through that process. Like that doesn't demonstrate urgency and severity. And so getting them to have some of that commitment up front. Is it a matter of dollars exchanging hands? I don't necessarily think so. I think it's a little hard sometimes for that to take place, but there is even a process usually for them to sign letters of intent or MOUs. And so if they're willing to go through that process to sign up or to sign that they have an intent to purchase, there's more urgency tied to that versus like, hey, we'll get the budget when it comes. That just leaves so much risk out there for when you actually go finally build it. And then they're like, yeah, we actually never really had the pain point, or actually the people who were there no longer were there. And so if it was just someone you had a relationship with, you might lose that opportunity. And so it should be grounded in some sort of like tangible validation of evidence, and that should be what we'd say is like some sort of artifact that proves that, versus someone just telling you that particular pain point exists.
Yeah, I agree with all that. There's a couple other things that I want to, I think, highlight on here. I think there's a really big difference between deep tech pre-market and deep tech post-market, right? So like once you're in market, the deep tech part doesn't matter because now you're just selling some shit you already have. But before that case, so like when deep tech actually really matters here is that, well, we say that like it matters because by definition, it's technology that requires substantive investment of time and resources, if not money. And so we actually can't just do this like, well, let's make a small bet, put it in front of customers and do the thing. Or it might be healthcare related or something that requires some regulatory action. And so like it's just not available. All those tools are just not available to us anymore. And so deep tech has to take a different path to market. And so when you do that, there's some signals that end up looking a lot different because while I agree, like desirability is important. If you're doing deep tech in healthcare, it sometimes is less important. Like if theoretically we had a drug, that cured a disease, would you buy it? Like, right. Like that's not an interesting question to ask, but a tool that helps a surgeon avoid, the leading cause of nosocomial infections, but requires them to do something slightly different, then like, okay, like in that event, we actually do need some validation of the problem, which might be in terms of actual studies, or and we might also need some validation from the physicians or from surgeons, or whatever. I don't remember which one I said, but like from healthcare providers that this is something that they would use or could use or would fit within the standard of care and that kind of thing. So it just looks different. We're not just asking people if they have a problem. But so one of the other signals that we can look for in addition to those would be in the form of strategic partnerships, right? Who is it that and strategic investors, who is it that really wants you to exist and is willing to gamble more than other people, usually in terms of dollars, to see that you can get to market? That's something that would be that's often really, really awesome and really helpful to get some of those logos involved. But just generic partners and logos don't do anything. We're actually people who put some skin in the game. They want you to exist so bad that they've thrown some money at it. That kind of thing. And so like the other way that I kind of want to come at this question is because I think we're talking, because I know you, Harsh, we're talking about something that is ready to be in the market. And so like the deep tech part of it is a little bit less important. So we're actually asking two sort of like bigger questions. So one is, how do you design experiments when the customer is a bureaucracy? Right. That's really the big question that we're asking is like a massive bureaucracy with no clear buyer. And then the second question there is like, how do you earn credibility in a market when desirability is not the same as demand? Right. And this goes back to like our nurse example is a great one from before too, right? Where like there's desirability on the part of the nurses, but there's actually no demand for the solution. And that's something that you can see all the time. And like, as you're selling to B2G, you might see that from people who are like that like, oh, this would be cool to exist, but there's actually no demand for it from an organizational perspective. So you got to kind of tease those two things out. I think a couple of things that I'd say with regard to that, to kind of be brief, because we're a little over time here. So I want to kind of land the plane, as they would say in corporate, since we're doing the corporate thing. Thank you for the graphic there. Please put your tray tables in their upright and locked positions. And here we go. So the strongest signal, to answer your question directly, Harsh, the strongest signal that you're looking for is not any kind of engagement. It's a signal that they intend to adopt. And so what is a signal that to you would tell you that they intend to adopt this solution? So if that's an LOI, it's going to be tied to a budget, right? If it's a pilot, it's going to have success criteria written into it. You're going to have interest from the stakeholders throughout the organization who would be part of that buying committee that we were talking about before. And then you would have to have a credible pathway to procurement. So like you need to know, like if this goes well, whatever that looks like, what does come next, and how do you actually get to procurement, and not just like starting over from the beginning. Otherwise, the whole thing didn't actually mean much at the end of the day. So I rambled there for a long time, but hopefully that made sense. You all may have missed that I have tequila sitting here at my desk.
You're just looking at it. You're just looking at it.
I have just looked at it. I have not had a sip of it yet. It was here because we called this happy hour, and because sometimes we get some crazy ass questions that may have caused me to need a drink of this tequila.
But hey, there was a sanity check, and really great questions, y'all, both from the grab bag and just in this space. So appreciate the time and energy and joining us on the third here. We hope you have a safe 4th of July weekend. Yeah, just appreciate the time and energy for you all hopping on, and especially JDM for the partnership in these office hours, and also just in serving founders. So applications, we have rolling for the Traction Lab. So if you want to engage with us regularly, do apply. Those are always ongoing. And then applications will be going live for the AngelCon application process starting on Monday. So keep an eye out for that. And as always, Traction Lab will keep you informed. So definitely follow us or subscribe to our Substack. And then also, we'll be here regularly, as well as Substack and Instagram. So we hope you have a good 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and so on of July.
all the days.
And then August, I don't really care.
If you want to stay in here for a while, we're just going to cycle days until we hit the end of the calendar year.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but in all seriousness, well said. For those of you here in the United States, happy 4th of July. For those of you in Canada, I hope you had an amazing Canada Day. For everybody else in the world,
yeah, we actually got to talk to a Canadian on Canada Day.
It was the day before Canada Day.
Was it? Oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you could have just played it off, but
Well,
what?
we were emailed with them on Canada Day. Does that count?
Okay, sure.
I think it counts. We talked to some Canadians on Canada Day.
Yeah.
About
we'll just erase you correcting me. So.
The number of times he's told me that, friends.
And then it's never corrected, huh? No. All right. Well, have a good long weekend, everyone. And look forward to continuing to support you in the ecosystem. So we will